Welcome to Days of Roar, the Detroit Tiger podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold, fresh off a week in Dallas, Texas, where basically he got a lot of rest because while he was digging for stories every day, there were very few, if any, besides an Alex Cobb story that involved the Detroit Tigers. Why don't you give us the 411? Because I'm sure there are tons of things about to happen that were being kept secret by the CIA level, clandestine, strategic information gathering front office of the Detroit Tigers. So what was going on down there in Dallas, Texas, Evan Petzold?
So I wasn't doing a whole lot of sleeping. I was doing a whole lot of working. There were some things that came out of the winter meetings with Japanese sensation Roki Sasaki, third baseman Alex Bregman, both of those things pertaining to the Tigers. But yeah, the winter meetings from December 9th to 12th in Dallas. So that ran Monday through Thursday. Pretty uneventful for the Tigers. They did not steal headlines. You are correct. Yes, there were plenty of news, nuggets, and notes that came out of the winter meetings, but nothing groundbreaking aside from a 1-year, $15 million deal for Alex Cobb. And with that being said, I want to walk us back through what's happened so far this offseason, and we're going to take it all the way back. Between Thanksgiving and the start of winter meetings, Yusei Kikuchi to the Los Angeles Angels for 3 years, $63 million. Blake Snell to the Los Angeles Dodgers for 5 years, $182 million. Frankie Montas to the New York Mets for 2 years, $34 million. Matthew Boyd to the Chicago Cubs for 2 years, $29 million. Aroldis Chapman to the Boston Red Sox for 1 year, $10.75 million. Luis Severino to the Athletics for 3 years, $67 million. Clay Holmes to the New York Mets for 3 years, $38 million. Tyler O'Neill to the Baltimore Orioles for 3 years, $49.5 million. Willy Adames to the San Francisco Giants for 7 years, $182 million. And then the winter meetings begin. From Sunday through Thursday, here's what happened. Juan Soto to the New York Mets for 15 years, $765 million. Michael Conforto to the Los Angeles Dodgers for 1 year, $17 million. Jordan Romano, he was non-tendered by the Toronto Blue Jays, to the Philadelphia Phillies for 1 year, $8.5 million. Max Fried to the New York Yankees for 8 years, $218 million. The Cleveland Guardians traded Andres Jimenez, their second baseman, Gold Glove winning second baseman, to the Toronto Blue Jays. Nathan Eovaldi to the Texas Rangers for 3 years, $75 million. Miami Marlins trade Jake Burger, a first baseman and third baseman, to the Texas Rangers for 2 shortstop prospects and a minor league left-handed starting pitcher. Chicago White Sox trade Garrett Crochet to the Boston Red Sox for 4 prospects, including Kyle Teal and Braden Montgomery. That's what happened at the winter meetings. And then the day after the winter meetings, so these moves happened on Friday. The Milwaukee Brewers traded Devin Williams, he's their closer, to the New York Yankees for Nestor Cortez, Caleb Durbin, and cash considerations. And the Houston Astros traded Kyle Tucker, the best left-handed hitter in baseball, aside from Juan Soto maybe, to the Chicago Cubs for Isaac Paredes, Hayden Wazinski, and Cam Smith. So that's the latest in baseball. Let's not forget the Tigers did have a move in there, signing 37-year-old right-hander Alex Cobb to a 1 year, $15 million contract on the first full day of the winter meetings. That happened on Monday morning. Reports surfaced by Monday afternoon, and then everything became official Tuesday night. We also learned that second baseman Colt Keith and outfielder Justyn-Henry Malloy will be taking ground balls at first base this offseason to expand their defensive versatility in 2025. But you're right, Mark. The Tigers did not make any headlines at the winter meetings. We reported coming out of the general manager meetings in early November that the Tigers would take a patient approach to the market in free agency and trades, and they've done exactly that. Even the Alex Cobb signing, funny story there. Coming out of the GM meetings, I put together a story of 10 potential free agent pitchers for the Tigers to sign on 1 year contracts. Some of those guys are more obvious fits than others, like Walker Buehler was an obvious fit, and it was someone the Tigers had expressed interest in. But I thought about putting Alex Cobb on that list. But when I checked with some people from his past, I was told that they thought he was going to announce his retirement. And that's why I didn't put him on the list. And Alex Cobb confirmed that when we talked to him earlier this week. I asked him if he contemplated retirement. He said he did. And now the Tigers are paying him $15 million for the 2025 season. I don't think the Tigers envisioned Alex Cobb getting $15 million after throwing just 16 2/3 innings last season. I don't think anyone thought that was possible. But that's the state of the pitching market right now. It's really, really expensive. So in that case, the Tigers being patient probably didn't pay off, but it could later in the offseason with other players because we still have 1 month and 3 weeks until pitchers and catchers report. The report date is February 12th. And to put that in perspective, we had 8 more podcasts before that report date for pitchers and catchers. There's still plenty of time left in the offseason. We did learn the Tigers are probably done trying to add their starting pitching group. They like the depth that they have. They like Tarik Skubal at the top with Reese, Olson, and Alex Cobb and Jackson Jobe in there. So don't expect to see Reclamation Project Walker Buehler or a reunion with Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, Justin Verlander. But that doesn't mean they can't add to the offense and the bullpen. Those are things to watch for coming out of the winter meetings.
Oh boy. I first would like to let Pablo Scott Harris know that I was considering retirement, but for $14 million, I am more than happy to consider one more season. So less than Alex Cobb, similar situation. My arm, by the way, at 69 years old, outstanding still. I can still bring gas. Probably limited to 5-inning outings, 80 pitches, but can still bring it. $14 million. Just putting it out there. Because if we're signing guys that were contemplating retirement, Mark Gorash was contemplating retirement, and I would be happy to unretire for $14 million. All right. So a lot to unpack there. A lot of guys we discussed in previous weeks. A lot of guys that we liked got traded. Jake Berger was traded for some used sofa cushions, an umbrella, and something that somebody picked up from a garage sale as they were driving by because it didn't sell at the garage sale. No interest in that. Devin Williams, liked him. Garrett Crochet, don't even get me started on Tarik Skubal Light. So a lot of things. Only one 37-year-old, very good pitcher when he's healthy. He had hip issues, fingernail issues, shoulder issues, a lot of issues. Are you concerned about the durability question? And are you surprised they went in this way? We're going to get to all of that, but let's get to question one of the big two. The Tigers signed Alex Cobb in a 1-year contract. What do you think about this addition to the starting rotation?
Yeah, I think you led us right into it, Mark, talking about some of the injury history and the fact that you're right. When he's healthy, he's been really good. So that's why I don't love it, but I don't hate it. A 1-year, $15 million contract, the deal can max out at $17 million if he unlocks a pair of bonuses, $1 million for 140 innings, and another $1 million for 150 innings. Right now, the Tigers have Tarik Skubal, Reese Olson, Alex Cobb, and from what I'm told, as long as he has a pulse in spring training, Jackson Jobe locked into the starting rotation. That leaves the 5th spot up for grabs. Kiter Montero, Brant Herter, Ty Madden, Kenta Maeda, Casey Mize, and even Matt Manning will be in the mix for that 5th spot. Here's what I like about Alex Cobb. Veteran presence, throws strikes, keeps the ball on the ground, locates multiple secondary pitches in the zone, and to your point, Mark, has been successful when healthy. He had a 3.80 ERA across 301 innings in 56 starts in the 2022-23 seasons. In those years, he ranked 25th in ERA, 15th in FIP, and 24th in FWAR among 44 pitchers with at least 300 innings, also ranking 3rd with an incredible 59.4% ground ball rate. That's what I like about Alex Cobb. What I don't like is the fact that he's 37 years old. He almost retired after last season, after he got removed from the Cleveland Guardians postseason roster because of a back injury. And then he was surprised when teams, including the Tigers, showed interest for his services in 2025. He underwent hip surgery in 2019, another hip surgery in 2023, also had Tommy John surgery on his right elbow in 2015, which is about 9.5 years ago. So how is that elbow holding up? In 2024, Alex Cobb suffered 5 different injuries while rehabbing from hip surgery. Elbow tightness, shoulder discomfort, a broken fingernail, a blood blister, and a low back strain. I'm not worried about the fingernail and the blister issues, but the elbow tightness, the shoulder discomfort, and the low back strain, that screams red flag, especially since this guy only pitched 16 2/3 innings in the regular season and 5 2/3 innings in the postseason. He ranked in the 16th percentile with a 22% whiff rate in 2023. Then he had an even worse 17% whiff rate in 2024. He doesn't miss enough bats. And to be quite honest, I'm just not the biggest fan of pitchers who don't miss bats. So those are some of the things that I'm excited about with Alex Cobb, but also there are some areas of concern.
Well, the good news is, while he's not missing bats, he does have a 54% ground ball rate, which is, I think, top 5 in baseball, which is good because the Tigers actually pick up ground balls. I kind of, like I said, if Alex Cobb is healthy, I like him. Gets people out, a lot of deception, brings a lot to the table. Secretly, I love the idea he's got a really good split. I'm hoping you can have some conversations with Casey Mize about that, even Ty Madden. I think it's almost a lock that Casey Mize is either getting dealt for Yandy Díaz or, will be the 5th starter. I think it's an uphill push for anybody else. I think Matt Manning probably is a reliever now. Herter probably in Toledo. Madden maybe a reliever. A lot of things going on there. But the Alex Cobb stuff, hey, look, you got to really like a guy to pay him $500,000 to $1 million a start. And you don't know if you're getting 15 starts or 30 starts or 3 starts. It's a quandary. And it's not like I care about the money they spent. At first I was mad about that, but they got a $90 million payroll. Why would they care how much money they spent? They got $25 to $30 million more to spend at least. And if you're going to blame Chris Ilitch for not spending money, I don't think you're paying attention, because I don't think Chris Ilitch is the problem about the spending of the money. I think Scott Harris, it just doesn't fit his strategy. This is the Mike Elias Baltimore Orioles strategy. Don't spend money, develop your own players, add a guy or two, maybe trade him in July. And if you're not paying attention, this is exactly what the strategy has been for the last, basically since they picked up, Scott Harrison in Uber. So I'm just letting you know, if you think it's changing, and we're going to talk a lot about this, I kind of doubt it.
Well, Mark, here's the thing too, is it's the pitching market as well is off the charts. So that's where you get the $15 million from, is the fact that that's how much it costs. Like Walker Buehler would have been a great fit on a 1-year deal, but he's probably looking for a 2-year deal with an opt-out after the first year. And that's not the Scott Harris strategy. The Scott Harris strategy is sign Michael Lorenzen, do a 1-year deal, flip him for prospects at the deadline, sign Jack Flaherty, do a 1-year deal, flip him for prospects at the deadline. What do you think is going to happen to Alex Cobb? The Tigers have so much pitching depth coming through their system. You think Alex Cobb is going to be sticking around? I bet you they flip him at the deadline. Even if they have a chance to make a push for winning the American League Central, I could very well see them parting ways with Alex Cobb, just because, again, in a world in which there is no free agent market for young players, you can't go get a free agent that's 20, 21, 22, and that's highly coveted. The only way to go get those guys is to make moves at the trade deadline or in the offseason in a trade. So you have a guy in a 1-year deal and you want to continue to supplement your organization with young players in the minor leagues and try to develop them up into big leaguers. The only way to do that is by making deals and trading guys, that are on 1-year contracts. That's what the Tigers did with Andrew Chafin. That's what they did with Carson Kelly. That's what they did with Mark Cannon. That's what they did with Jack Flaherty. That's what they did with Michael Lorenzen. And so, do I think Alex Cobb is going to be a Tiger post-trade deadline? I'm not so sure about that. That's the Scott Harris way. That's the Scott Harris way. That's how he's done it. But until then, there are some things to like about Alex Cobb. Like the ground ball rate, 58% ground ball rate in 2023. That ranked in the 95th percentile. And then he improved the ground ball rate in 2024 to 61% in limited appearances. He also ranked in the 87th percentile with a 5.7% walk rate in 2023. That improved to 4.8% in 2024. He hasn't had a ground ball rate below 50% since 2019. The MLB average is 44.4%. So he is a ground ball specialist, throws a splitter, throws a sinker, throws a curveball. The sinker averages right around 94. It induces all the ground balls. The splitter sits right around 89 miles an hour, generates some chase. I think he could use that pitch to get some more swing and miss. And then the curveball averages 83 miles an hour. It has depth and it produces called strikes early in counts. The Tigers think they can help Cobb unlock more swing and miss, specifically with a splitter. I know Alex Cobb is interested in throwing a 4-seam fastball. He's also interested in changing his pitch grips for 2 of his pitches. He's interested in changing it for his splitter and for his curveball in specific counts to try to get more swing and miss in those counts. So basically kind of creating like a splitter 2.0 and a curveball 2.0 in certain situations just to give hitters different looks. And then I think this is pretty important too, is that he's doing preventative physical therapy this offseason for the first time in his entire career in hopes of trying to catch any potential injuries that could pop up as he prepares for the 2025 season. He's doing physical therapy 3 days per week as part of his 6-day training program. Hopefully that helps him stay healthy. I know that sounds like a big red flag, kind of because it is, but at the same time, I like the fact that he is taking steps to try to stay on the field for a full season and beyond into the postseason if called upon. My biggest takeaway from all this is like when healthy, Alex Cobb is an effective starting pitcher. But the reality is he's averaged just 103 innings per season in the past 4 seasons because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Is he worth $15 million? No way. But the pitching market is the market. And the pitching market's expensive. So when you live in a world where the market is the market and the pitching market is expensive, Alex Cobb is going to get $15 million. That's just how it is. I mean, Matthew Boyd got $29 million. Frankie Montas got $34 million. Alex Cobb got $15 million. So be it.
Look, Alex Cobb, good signing, fits perfectly the profile of what the Detroit Tigers look for in pitching. Throws strikes, first pitch strikes, ground balls, doesn't walk people, and probably brings a lot of pitching aptitude to the staff, may be able to help unlock a few other players with his experience. So let's move to question 2, the big 2, which I'm seriously looking forward to discussing. What else do you expect the Detroit Tigers to do to improve their major league roster?
So the Tigers are probably done shopping for starting pitchers, and the reliever market is slow moving. So let's talk about the offense, because the offense is what the Tigers desperately need to upgrade. The obvious areas to upgrade: first base and third base. The Tigers need to upgrade at least one of those positions with an all-star caliber player if they want to get serious about winning the American League Central in 2025, getting back to the postseason, and even having a chance to make a deep run. Mark, I'm going to turn this back around on you. What do you think the Tigers should do? And then I'll get into what I'm hearing and how I think things could end up going.
All right. So let's discuss the elephant in the room, because we need to. People want to know, will the Tigers sign Alex Bregman? Will they even get into the fray on Alex Bregman? My answer is, will they sign him? Well, from my guesses, the Yankees will be hot on that. They have plenty of money to spend now that they have not spent it on Juan Soto. They do need a third baseman badly, and he'd fit there very well. Boston Red Sox, another good fit. Seattle Mariners, good fit. 4th place in that, the Detroit Tigers, maybe 3rd place. Do I expect Scott Harris to sign Alex Bregman? Well, now that Kyle Tucker is gone, I would expect Houston is not in the Alex Bregman sweepstakes. So I've raised my percentage of likelihood the Detroit Tigers sign Alex Bregman from 2% to 15%. And 15% is very generous. Do I think they're signing him? Hell no. Do I think they need a first baseman? Well, let's get into that for a second, because Evan Petzold reporting after a discussion with Scott Harris that Colt Keith and Justyn-Henry Malloy are being encouraged to work out at first base this winter. I find that very, very interesting. I find it interesting in a good way. First of all, do I think Colt Keith is playing first base? Yeah, probably some in spring training, but not really. He's the second baseman. He's a 3-WAR second baseman. And unless they plan on moving Jay Shung to second base, or Lee comes up somehow miraculously from Toledo and plays second base, yeah, I think Colt Keith's playing second base. However, do I think Jay-Hen could play first base? Oh, hell yeah. Do I think he'll play it well? Well, probably not. But do I think he could hit well enough to supersede Spencer Torkelson, and that has Pobo Scott Harris salivating? 100%. Do I think it would deter him from signing a first baseman? 100%. Because Scott Harris does not like signing free agents. It's just foreign to his strategy. My insane idea, what they should really start considering, and I can't believe what a perfect fit it is, and actually, weirdly, how good it is, was if Pete Alonso is not going to go back to the Mets, maybe a 3 year with an option for a fourth year, 4-year, $100 million deal makes a lot of sense for the Tigers. Right-hand hitter, hits 30 to 35 bombs, walks at 10%. And before you say how terrible that idea is, I dug a little into Pete Alonso. How about this, Ev? This is an Evan Petzold kind of player. Pete Alonso has been in the major leagues for 24 months. For 20 of those 24 months, he's had a WRC plus of 100 or better. In the last 18 major league months, he's had a WRC plus of 100 or better 16 out of those 18 months. He has a lifetime WRC plus of 125. So when you're talking about Pete Alonso, who's not a very good defender, it's shocking how consistently productive he is. And it's shocking that there's a giant hole at first base begging to be filled by a productive, powerful right-hand hitter. And maybe the insane idea is to start courting Pete Alonso. What a perfect fit. A consistent power-hitting first baseman that seemingly no one wants. Now, do I think the Mets are letting anybody go over money? Don't be ridiculous. All the Mets do is spend money, but I'd be having a discussion because you never know what the player wants to do.
Yeah, I think exactly your point, right? Like, yes, we might like Pete Alonso, but so does New York Mets owner Steve Cohen. And while Pete Alonso probably isn't going to get the long-term deal that he hoped he was going to get, if it is a shorter-term deal, let's say, just to speculate and throw out an example, let's say the Tigers offer 4 years, $100 million, like you just mentioned. Well, Steve Cohen's going to say, yeah, you know what? I'll do 4 and 120. And you know what? If the Tigers say, yeah, we'll match that, then Steve Cohen will say, yeah, I'll do 150 for 5 or something like that, right? Like I don't see the New York Mets letting him slip away, especially if it is a short-term contract. Now, if we're talking about a long-term deal, I think anything could be at play, but I just don't think Pete Alonso is actually going to get a long-term deal. And obviously the Tigers would not give him a long-term deal. I think if we're talking a short-term deal, it's really hard to pry him away from a team that's just going to spend. And they're not afraid to put the dollar sign on the check and hand it over and make it happen. So I do not see Pete Alonso as a possibility for the Tigers. As for what I am hearing, I've heard the Tigers have interest in Alex Bregman, Paul Goldschmidt, Ha-Sung Kim, and Christian Walker. Those are 4 free agent names I've heard that are tied to the Tigers in some way, shape, or form. Could there be others? Most definitely there are. There are more names, but those are some of the notable names I've heard the Tigers have varying levels of interest in on the free agent market. I also don't think Nolan Arenado, St. Louis Cardinals third baseman, is a fit for the Tigers, especially because of his no trade clause. He's not going to accept a trade to play in Detroit, right? Like he has to clear that. He has to waive the no trade clause. I don't think he's doing that to come play in Detroit. I also don't think Alec Bohm is a fit for the Tigers. He's the third baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies. Nobody seems to want him, which is understandable. Meanwhile, the Miami Marlins already traded Jake Berger to the Texas Rangers. As for Tampa Bay Rays first baseman Yandy Díaz, that's a name on the trade market to continue to monitor. I think he would be a great fit for the Tigers if they ultimately decide to move on from Spencer Torkelson, because Díaz is owed $10 million in 2025 with a $12 million team option for 2026. So he's under team control for the next 2 seasons. That allows you to segue right into prospect Josue Braceno. Earlier this offseason, I mocked Yandy Díaz to the Tigers for right-handers Casey Mize and Troy Melton. Maybe swap Melton for Justyn-Henry Malloy. Since I think the Tigers are open to trading Malloy, that deal makes a little bit more sense to me. Casey Mize and Justyn-Henry Malloy for Yandy Díaz. I don't know. Who says no to that deal? We'll see. I'm not sure if the Tigers are actually going to go out and get Yandy Díaz, but that's just a name that you got to keep monitoring on the trade market. As for free agency, I heard the Tigers had interest in Paul Goldschmidt coming out of the general manager meetings in early November. Then MLB.com's John Morosi reported that interest at the winter meetings here in early December. So this is pretty much me just saying that I can confirm what Morosi reported is accurate. The Tigers have at least some level of interest in Goldschmidt. 2 years ago, Goldschmidt won the 2022 National League MVP award. He absolutely crushed, hit .317 with 35 home runs and a .981 OPS in 151 games. Now he is expected to sign a 1-year contract as a first-time free agent. In 2024 for Goldie, it was a tale of 2 halves of the season. He hit .225 with a 140 isolated power and a 28.6% strikeout rate in 94 games from March 28th to July 20th. And then Paul Goldschmidt hit .281 with a 217 isolated power and a 22.8% strikeout rate in 60 games from July 21st through September 29th. He increased his OPS during those two stretches from .652 in the first 94 games to .824 in the final 60 games. In those final 60 games, he ranked 41st among 154 qualified position players in that second half stretch. So give me that production all day if it's sustainable, especially if he continues to play above average defense at first base. It's a 3-WAR or 4-WAR potential on a 1-year contract. Yes, there is a decline to worry about, but over just a 1-year deal, you're not going to catch me complaining about that. We need to talk about the qualifying offer. The qualifying offer is attached to both Alex Bregman and Christian Walker, among the 4 names I mentioned. Bregman, Walker, Kim, and Goldschmidt. The qualifying offer is only attached to Bregman and Walker. Now, the qualifying offer was $21.05 million for 2025. Players who accept the qualifying offer sign 1-year contracts with their teams for $21 million. Players who decline the qualifying offer remain free agents. And if a new team signs them, the old team receives draft pick compensation. Basically, the Tigers will have to give up a 2025 draft pick to the Houston Astros if they sign Bregman. And the Tigers will have to give up a 2025 draft pick to the Arizona Diamondbacks if they sign Christian Walker. The Tigers received revenue sharing. They would forfeit their 3rd highest pick in the 2025 draft. That's the number 58 overall pick in the second round. The Tigers had number 24 overall in the first round, number 31 overall in competitive balance round A, and then number 58 overall in the second round. For example, the Tigers' 3rd highest draft pick would have been Ethan Schiefelbein in 2024 and Max Anderson in 2023. That's the caliber of player you're giving up if you're the Tigers by signing one of these guys, Alex Bregman or Christian Walker. The Tigers love their draft picks, and they had a great draft process, and they love their top-end draft picks. Like, are they going to want to give up the number 58 draft pick in 2025 to sign Christian Walker for 2 or 3 years? I don't see that happening, which is why, although the Tigers have expressed some interest, the Walker to Detroit movement is a long shot. As for Bregman, it's a little bit different because the Tigers will be signing Bregman to a longer contract, more like 5 or 6 years. And speaking of Alex Bregman, because we need to talk about this, I'm told the Tigers have been engaged in conversations about Bregman and talks are ongoing. The Tigers want Bregman and Bregman is interested in the Tigers. He has familiarity with Tigers manager AJ Hinch and Tigers bullpen catcher Christian Nea, but the Tigers don't want to spend $200 million for Bregman. Bregman, however, wants a $200 million contract. He has 6 years, $156 million on the table to re-sign with the Houston Astros. You have the Astros, Tigers, New York Yankees, and Boston Red Sox. Those are the teams with interest. I think every team is still in play, even the Astros, who just traded Kyle Tucker to the Cubs for third baseman Isaac Paredes, plus 2 other players, including a prospect who plays third base. Paredes has plenty of experience playing first base, which would allow for Bregman to return and play third base. Or the Astros could trade for Nolan Arenado. Both Arenado and Bregman are great fits for the Astros because of their Crawford boxes in left field, meaning those 2 players, they're right-handed pull-heavy hitters, so they'll crush home runs into the Crawford boxes. Both Arenado and Bregman fit that mold, and they both play third base. Isaac Paredes can play first base. I do think the Astros need to sign Bregman or trade for Arenado if they really want to compete in the American League West and if they want to sell some tickets. As for the Tigers, I think they're waiting to see what happens. If the Astros trade for Arenado, then that Bregman offer isn't on the table anymore. So then you have the Yankees and the Red Sox and maybe of a couple other teams. What if the Yankees and the Red Sox go cold on Bregman and they decide to look elsewhere for their upgrades, such as Anthony Santander, Teoscar Hernandez, or trade for Cody Bellinger? And then the Tigers are left standing and Alex Bregman is left standing. Then maybe the Tigers could get Bregman for less than $200 million. Yes, there are some concerns, including the declining power production, several right elbow injuries. He's had some surgery to remove some bone spurs a couple of times now, but he's been worth more than 4 WAR in each of the past 3 seasons with his combined 14 FWAR from 2022 to 24, ranking 18th among 230 qualified position players. He is a Gold Glove third baseman who hits in the middle of the lineup. That's exactly what the Tigers need. It still seems like some dominoes have to fall, especially if the Tigers aren't willing to offer $200 million. But Alex Bregman is definitely something to keep an eye on. Something changed in the month between the GM meetings and the winter meetings. The Tigers weren't pursuing Bregman at all in the beginning. And now they've crept into the mix and they've had some discussion. So I'm not holding my breath, but we'll see what happens. And I don't want to forget about Ha-Seong Kim, who plays shortstop, third base, second base, won't be healthy for opening day, coming back from shoulder surgery to repair a labrum tear. Not sure what his market is. It could be a 1-year deal, 3-year deal, 5-year deal. If it's a 1-year deal, I think the Tigers definitely will be in the mix for Kim. He fits all their philosophies on offense. He runs the base as well. He plays above average defense at 3 infield positions. I don't think he's going to the Giants after they signed Willy Adames, so that opens the door for other teams, including the Tigers. That's where I'm at right now. Watching Alex Bregman, Paul Goldschmidt, Christian Walker a little bit, and then Ha-Seong Kim on the free agent market. Also watching Yandy Díaz on the trade market, maybe even a little bit of Nolan Arenado, but I don't think that's happening. That's where I'm at with the Tigers right now. I don't think Pete Alonso is the answer. I don't think that's happening, but I do think the Tigers need to upgrade their offense if they want to get real about winning the AL Central in 2025. And AJ Hinch has already expressed they want to win the AL Central in 2025. You got to upgrade the offense if you want to get there.
Question. Evan Petzold favorite Anthony Santander. Not even in the mix for the Tigers, huh?
We'll see. I'm just not sure if outfield is really the spot that they need to upgrade. Like, I get it. And then the fear, too, is that he's probably going to be a DH-only type player within a few years. And I think there might be some concerns on that front. Does it make sense? Sure, because you can throw him in the outfield and Matt Vierling could play, third base, and that's how you roll. Fine. But it just makes way more sense to have, go out and get a third baseman, move Matt Vierling back to the outfield where he's more comfortable and he's better out there anyway. And then you can rotate and you can shuffle guys around and you'll play Kerry Carpenter some in right field. You got to keep that in mind as well. So I don't see Anthony Santander being as good of a fit. I do really like the player. We'll see what his market ends up being if the Tigers creep their way in, but I have not heard any interest in him so far. We'll see if that changes.
All right. I still think the Yandy Díaz, Casey Mize trade is perfect for both teams. If we add a pitcher into that deal, I'd like to see him to try to get Pete Fairbanks also thrown into that deal for the bullpen. Good fit. All right. It's getting time to take a break. We need to do that. We'll be back in 60. All right, we're back. And one of my favorite things of early winter is to discuss the 2025 opening day roster predictions. And guess who has already written a roster prediction 1.0? Tiger beat writer Evan Petzold. All right, so share with us what you think the opening day roster looks like on December 16th.
2025 opening day roster prediction 1.0. We'll probably get up to 3 or 4 by the end of spring training. 26 players. I have catcher Jake Rogers, first base Spencer Torkelson, second base Colt Keith, shortstop Trey Sweeney, third base Matt Vierling, outfield Riley Green in left field, Parker Meadows in center field, Wenzel Perez in right field, designated hitter Kerry Carpenter. On the bench, I have Dylan Dingler, backup catcher, utility player Zach McKinstry, infielder Andy Ibanez, and shortstop Javier Baez. Starting rotation, I have Tarik Skubal, Reese Olson, Jackson Jobe, Alex Cobb, and then a surprise, Brant Herter. In the bullpen, I have Jason Foley, Tyler Holton, Will Vest, Bo Brisky, Sean Gunther, Brennan Hanafy, Casey Mize, and Kenta Maeda. In terms of my first 4 out, I have right-hander Kader Montero, third baseman Jace Young, outfielder Justyn-Henry Malloy, and right-hander Matt Manning. I think in a perfect world, if the Tigers sign a third baseman such as Alex Bregman, like that is maybe the most perfect scenario for the Tigers in the offseason. And if that happens, Matt Vierling starts in right field, Wenzel Perez moves to the bench. But if Perez moves to the bench, who do you take off the bench? Dylan Dingler is staying as the backup catcher. So then it's McKinstry, Ibanez, and Baez. So who do you remove for Wenzel Perez in that situation? The switch hit bat is valuable, but I wonder if Perez starts in AAA Toledo ultimately if the Tigers sign a third baseman and Vierling moves into the outfield. Like, let's not forget Wenzel Perez hit .223 with a .612 OPS in his final 83 games last season. He only played in 112 games. His final 83 games were pretty terrible on offense. And if you're struggling to find a roster spot for Wenzel Perez, then you're definitely not finding a roster spot for Jace Young, and you're definitely not finding a roster spot for Justyn-Henry Malloy. That's just the reality of the situation right now. As for the rotation, I'm torn between Brant Herter and Kiter Montero for that final rotation spot. I think that could go to Montero. I think Herter is a better pitcher, so that's why I went there. But I also think the Tigers could weaponize Herter as a multi-inning reliever who throws 100 innings, just like Tyler Holton. So I don't think Montero is capable of doing the same thing. So for that reason, I could see the Tigers going with Montero in the rotation just because he fits that traditional starter mold, whereas Herter could be weaponized in various different ways. And obviously, if Montero is going to be in the rotation, that bumps Casey Mize to AAA Toledo or to the bullpen. Again, we have 58 days until pitchers and catchers report to spring training. We have 101 days until opening day on March 27th against the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's still pretty early to be getting into the weeds about roster battles because there's still 1 month and 3 weeks remaining in the offseason. We could go on and on about this stuff, and then we'll run out of content for spring training. But that's where I'm at. Like, when you really look up and down, I think you have question mark at first base, but right now it's Spencer Torkelson. You have a question mark at third base, but right now your best option is Matt Vierling. Okay, like that's just where you're at. You have question marks with the bench. Is Javier Baez going to be healthy for opening day? Who knows? But I think right now you're paying him so much money, you have to go into this thing expecting he's going to be healthy. I don't think you can count on him to be hurt. So I think you got to count on Javi Baez being on your opening day roster, at least until further notice. And then in the starting rotation, you have Skubal, Olson, Jackson Jobe, Alex Cobb. Those guys are locked in. Jackson Jobe is going to make the opening day roster, from what I've been told, as long as he has a pulse in spring training. Like, he's just got to put up a fight and be competent. And as long as he does that, he's going to find himself on the opening day roster. So you got 4 guys locked in. Who gets that 5th rotation spot? That's a big question mark. The bullpen obviously is a huge toss-up at this point. Like, there are 4 guys who are locked in: Jason Foley, Tyler Holton, Will Vest, Bo Brisky. Those are your bullpen locks. Sean Gunther is not locked in. Brennan Hannafy is not locked in. And then you have an assortment of players, whether it's Casey Mize or Kenta Maeda or Brant Herter or Kiter Montero or Matt Manning. Like, any of those guys could be fits for that last rotation spot, or they could fit into the bullpen as well. So there are a number of different ways that you could put together an opening day roster prediction. I still think it's way too early to determine what's going to happen when it comes to the rotation in the bullpen, just because we don't know how guys are going to fit with their roles yet. Tigers could still go out and add a reliever. I think they need to, specifically a swing and miss, high leverage, back end reliever. Maybe it's somebody like a Kirby Yates, or maybe it's somebody like an Andrew Chafin. I would not mind them bringing back Andrew Chafin. He misses a ton of bats. The Tigers have done this time and time again. Andrew Chafin loves Detroit. He loves playing close to his family in Ohio. It makes a ton of sense. He throws strikes. He does everything you'd want. He throws strikes. He can eat leverage innings, and he misses a ton of bats to get strikeouts. So Andrew Chafin can make some sense. Kirby Yates could make some sense. Like, there are some names out there who could fit for the Tigers from a bullpen standpoint. But right now you got 4 guys locked in the bullpen. You got 4 guys locked in for the rotation. And when you look around the diamond, sure, maybe a question mark at first base, a question mark at third base. Who plays the majority of right field? Is it Matt Vierling? Is it Wenzel Perez? Is it Kerry Carpenter? Right? Or is Kerry Carpenter your primary DH? I think with the injury history, you got to DH Kerry Carpenter quite a bit and kind of keep that as a rotating spot for other guys. Riley Green as well. Got to get him off his feet a little bit more often than they did last season. So I don't know. That's kind of where things are at right now. We still have so much time to figure it out. But Mark, what do you think about that? And do you have any thoughts?
I think there's an 85% chance right now that Matt Vierling is the third baseman for the Detroit Tigers. We discussed a little bit last week. In 185 plus at bats as a third baseman, he had a 1.1 WAR. It extrapolates to over a 3 WAR, playing the position on a full-time basis. I think the Tigers' data department knows that. I think Scott Harris knows that. And I think in your talks with Scott Harris, he's told you how much he likes Matt Vierling and how comfortable he feels with him playing third base. So at this point in time, I think it's highly unlikely that anybody else besides Matt Vierling is the third baseman. Now, at first base, if I was doing a 1.0, I'd say Yandy Díaz is going to be acquired in a trade for Casey Mize.
But what if he's not, Mark?
If he's not, then you're going to get the ultimate crapshoot of Spencer Torkelson, who for 13 weeks had a 122 WRC plus in 2023, 20 home runs plus. And for the rest of his 3 years in Detroit, he's been absolute ass. He's had about a 95 WRC plus, and it leaves a giant hole at first base. So Scott Harris has to understand, this isn't, I'm building a team to compete for the playoffs anymore. This is, we made the playoffs last year. We won 33 out of our last 45 baseball games. My manager is the best in baseball. I have a rock solid, deep pitching staff with the best pitching minds in baseball. Why are you playing Spencer Torkelson at first base if you don't have to?
I mean, Mark, we could go on and on about Torkelson, but let me throw another name at you, right? Trey Sweeney at shortstop. How do we feel about Trey Sweeney at shortstop? This is a guy who last year he came up, and yes, he was solid defensively. I mean, he hit 218. He had a 642 OPS. He had 7 walks in 32 strikeouts and 119 plate appearances. I mean, when you look at Trey Sweeney, yes, the defense was solid. He was fine. He's nothing special, but he'll get the job done. I mean, he's an average shortstop defensively, but he's a below average player on offense. When you look at what he gave you, I mean, again, like it was a 5.9% walk rate. MLB average is 8.2. It was a 26.9% strikeout rate. MLB average is 22.6. So for as much as we talk about Spencer Torkelson, like, aren't there some concerns at shortstop too with Trey Sweeney? Like, what does year 2 look like for him? Does he really take that next step, or is he actually not very good? Like, I understand there was a lot of hype around him because he came up and he made a really big catch in Baltimore, and that feels good. But I don't know, is Trey Sweeney a sure thing? Is Spencer Torkelson a sure thing? You know, Matt Vierling at third base, I think he's solid. He's rock solid there, but I'd rather have Matt Vierling as a fourth outfielder type, getting every day at bats, whether it's a little bit at third base, a little bit in right field, maybe a couple DH days where somebody else can then come off the bench and pinch hit later on. Like, I don't know. I think there are other question marks even beyond Spencer Torkelson, and that's what concerns me a little bit.
I'll give you my rundown of the depth chart at shortstop. Trey Sweeney, Javi Baez, number 2. Javi Baez will not start the season on the active 25. So in iteration 2.0, Javi Baez will be on the DL. He's going to play in spring training. He's going to go on the DL. He's going to go on a rehab assignment to Toledo and play every day and see what happens playing every day.
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities, but you can't count on that. You can't say take that to the bank.
Well, what can you take to the bank? Can you take Spencer Torkelson to the bank? So my plan C at shortstop after Trey Sweeney is anytime after the 1st of June, I would not be shocked if he continues to rake that Kevin McGonigal plays himself into consideration of being promoted from Erie to play shortstop. Or they will make a deal at the trade deadline if it warrants making a deal at the trade deadline because it means they're in the mix to make the playoffs. So I think plan A, Trey Sweeney. Plan B, Javi Baez. Plan C, Kevin McGonigal at shortstop. So that's kind of plan D is make a deal.
For sure. No, or go sign someone like Ha-Seong Kim and have him ready to go if you need him once he gets healthy, for sure. I also think, too, you mentioned first base and Spencer Torkelson. I do think it's notable, though, you know, that Colt Keith and Justyn-Henry Malloy are taking ground balls at first base this offseason. In the short term, like, it's because Torkelson has been the everyday first baseman for the past 3 seasons. In the long term, it's because Colt Keith is expected to outgrow second base and eventually transition to first base. But as for 2025, Torkelson needs to win a job on the opening day roster, and having Keith take grounders at first base applies some pressure to him both this offseason and in spring training. Now, Colt Keith improved at second base last season. He was worth -8 defensive runs saved, but he excels going to his left. He cleaned up his footwork on double plays. He still needs to hit for more power, as his 120 isolated power ranked 121st among 130 position players with at least 500 plate appearances. Torkelson, by the way, had a 155 isolated power, which was better than Keith's 120 isolated power. Torkelson also improved at first base in the second half of the season, but the Tigers are ready to challenge Torkelson. Certainly Colt Keith will challenge him. I'm not as optimistic about Justyn-Henry Malloy playing first base. From everything I've heard, he's pretty robotic and pretty mechanical when he has played defense at third base and in left field in the past. He doesn't play loose. He doesn't play free. He overthinks a lot of the things that he does. I think that's a big concern at first base when the action happens fast. Like, that action happens real fast at first base, and you're involved on pretty much every play, it seems like. And so that's why I don't really think that that's actually going to happen from a standpoint of like, yes, will he take ground balls there in spring training? For sure. Like, could he maybe play some spring training games there? No doubt. But do I think that Justyn-Henry Malloy is really going to play first base when he hasn't proven that he can play third base? He hasn't proven that he can play either outfield position and in the corners. So why should I suddenly believe that he can play first base? Like, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's nice that the Tigers are willing to try. I think it says something. Yes, I also have some concerns about Jay-Hen's swing and miss rate. Like, I don't like the fact that he swings and misses so much. He does that a lot. Yes, he knows the zone, but he doesn't put the ball in play enough. So I do have some concerns about Jay-Hen. I do think the Colt Key stuff is real. I think he's ultimately going to be a first baseman at some point in his career. So this kind of speeds up the process a little bit. It was bound to happen eventually. It's not very surprising. I do think it's notable. But yeah, like when you look around the diamond, Mark, it's first base is kind of that glaring concern where you're like, who's going to play first base before Josue Braceno gets here? Whether that's in 2026 or 2027, probably more like 2027. Who's actually going to play first base? Right now, the Tigers have Spencer Torkelson, a little bit of Colt Keith, and pretty much nobody else.
Well, here's what I have to say about Jay-Hen playing first base. Reminds me a lot of a previous iteration of a really decent bat first player the Tigers developed and then allowed to leave for nothing. Nicholas Castellanos. We begged for him to get transitioned to first base. They never did. And let's be blunt about it. Nicholas Castellanos is one of the worst defensive baseball players in Major League Baseball for a decade now. Doesn't matter where you put him. Can't hide him unless he's a DH. He's a terrible defender. He does play 150 games a year, but he's still a terrible defender. Jay-Hen in many ways reminds me of Nicholas Castellanos defensively. I do hope that he's better than we think, because quietly he's earned a lot of respect from me with his hitting aptitude, and I'd be excited to see what he could do if he could play some defense. Well, all right, it's time to take a break. Last one of the day. We'll be back. Interesting situation developing for Scott Harris. And when I say interesting, I mean terrifying. Blake Snell, Max Fried, both left-handers, both got giant paychecks this winter. 2 years from now, Tarik Skubal is going to get paid. I think at this point in time, and I have suggested this so many times, I can't even count anymore, that the Tigers should overpaid him for year 5 and 6, 2 ARB years, and then 4 more years after with an opt-out after 4 years. But obviously, let's be blunt. Not happening. Not happening. So what I'll say to you is the Tigers are going to take the next 2 years of essentially cheap Tarik Skubal, and then he will leave. And if you don't believe he will leave, Tarik Skubal, at the behest of the Boris Corporation, has been raising his profile on social media, his profile in general. He was a Cy Young winner this year. And if he's healthy, 2 years from now, stands to get a 6-year, $240 to $250 million contract in free agency based upon what happened this year.
Did you say 6 years, 240?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my gosh, Mark. Okay. Let's pump the brakes there, because he's going to get paid, I think, a whole lot more than that if we really look at it, right? Like I think the Blake Snell and Max Fried contracts tell us a ton about Tarik Skubal's current market and also his potential for future market. Blake Snell, he's 32 years old. He signed a 5-year, $182 million contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's $36.4 million per year. Max Fried, he's 31 years old. He signed an 8-year, $218 million contract with the New York Yankees. That's $27.25 million per year. Tarik Skubal is 28 years old. He is the reigning Cy Young winner, and he becomes a free agent after the 2026 season, which means he has 2 years of team control remaining. He will be here for 2026. He will be here for 2025 as well. But after 2026, he will be a free agent unless the Tigers sign him to a contract extension. The Tigers have already tried and failed to extend him. It was not a competitive offer. I know certain people with the Tigers want me to tell you that it was a franchise record type offer, but it was still a non-competitive offer. I mean, Garrett Cole got 9 years, $324 million in December 2019. I think Skubal will get more than that in free agency. Yoshinobu Yamamoto got 12 years, $325 million in December 2023. I think Tarik Skubal will get more than that in free agency. Not in years, but probably in money. There's a chance Skubal climbs to the top of the all-time pitching contract leaderboard, which is currently Yamamoto at number 1 and Garrett Cole at number 2. So what's it going to take to extend Skubal? Like, this is just a guess, but like, I would say right now, he's worth, 10 years, $361 million. If the Tigers were to extend him right now, maybe even more than that. That would be $36.1 million per year for 10 seasons, which includes buying out the final 2 years of salary arbitration. So 2 years of arbitration, 8 years in free agency. That's how you get to 10 years. And if the Tigers don't extend him, he might hit free agency and still be looking at 10 years, $361 million, which is, again, like why I don't see him signing an extension. That's why he's going to wait until free agency. Like, he would be a free agent at 30 years old, a 10-year deal that would take him through his age 39 season. Like, if Garrett Cole is getting 9 years, $324 million back in 2019, do I think Tarik Skubal after the 2026 season, that's a lot of years, let's not forget inflation, do I think it's far off to think that Tarik Skubal could get, $361 million if Garrett Cole got $324 million in December 2019? Like, I think Tarik Skubal is going to seriously get paid. Like, I know you mentioned 241, but I think it's going to be more than that. And that's why he's likely to wait until free agency. We also need to consider what happened to Juan Soto. In July 2022, Juan Soto rejects a 15-year, $440 million offer from the Washington Nationals. December 2024, Juan Soto signs a 15-year, $765 million contract with the New York Mets. That's a difference of $325 million just by waiting 2 years to get to free agency. So why would Tarik Skubal want to sign now? He could be worth more than $350 million, if not $400 million, when he becomes a free agent after 2026. And I can promise you that's not what the Tigers offered to extend Tarik Skubal. Like, again, let's not forget, Juan Soto rejected 15 years, $440 million. 2 years later, he signs 15 years, $765 million. Like, does Tarik Skubal want to sign early? Heck no. He wants to get to free agency because you don't know what teams are going to offer. I mean, look what Juan Soto got. Look at what Garrett Cole got back in 2019. Like, times have changed. Look at what pitchers are getting paid right now. I mean, you go look at the fact that Blake Snell got 5 years, $182 million at age 32. Tarik Skubal is going to get more than $240 million in free agency if he waits until after the 2026 season. Like, I think Tarik Skubal is primed to get paid, and that's why I don't see it happening. And I do think the Blake Snell deal and the Max Fried deal make things really interesting, especially when you consider if Tarik Skubal continues his production, he's going to get paid more than Garrett Cole, and Scott Boras is going to try to break the Yamamoto record. Yamamoto has the record right now when it comes to the all-time pitching contract leaderboard at 325. He beat Garrett Cole by $1 million. Garrett Cole, a Boras client as well, was at 324. You don't think that Scott Boras is thinking about getting Tarik Skubal more than $325 million? I bet he is. And I think Tarik Skubal's worth it.
Well, he may be worth it. He's also had TJ. It will be almost a decade post TJ for him when he becomes a free agent and flexor tendon. So the idea that teams are going to start throwing 8 and 10 years at Tarik Skubal, just don't see it. Do I see 40 to 45 million AAV? Oh yeah, I absolutely do, assuming he's healthy for the next 2 years. What it also leads me to discuss with you is, I'll be very interested to see what Kyle Tucker gets, because who's Kyle Tucker light? Does he play for the Detroit Tigers? Absolutely he does.
Riley Green has a long ways to go, Mark, but I appreciate what you're saying, and I think there is some truth to it, but I want to pump the brakes on that only because I think Riley Green still has a long ways to go. But he's taking steps every single year. Like, can Riley Green get there? For sure. He's got the talent to get there. I don't want to say that he is well on his way to becoming Kyle Tucker, but there are certainly some similar, qualities, especially when you consider the left-handed bat, the corner outfield position. Like, it does kind of make some sense. And yes, Kyle Tucker is going to freaking get paid. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, there's Juan Soto and then there's Kyle Tucker when it comes to corner outfield, left-handed hitters. Kyle Tucker's going to get paid.
I bring these two issues up because you now have two players likely who are your primary two core players. And it's, very, very likely that both are going to demand and deserve north of $40 million a year, and not too soon in the future.
Well, it's a little bit different for Riley Green. Tarik Skubal becomes a free agent after the 2026 season. Riley Green becomes a free agent after the 2028 season. So the Tigers do have Riley Green for a bit. That injury that he had back in spring training when he was supposed to make the opening day roster for his big league debut that actually messed with his service time and bumped him back a year. Actually, the injury, really screwed Riley Green because he would be a free agent the year earlier. But yeah, Riley Green, not until after the 2028 season. So the Tigers do have him for a little bit, but you're spot on with this conversation. It's like these guys are both going to get paid eventually. Tarik Skubal before Riley Green for sure. And at this point, with what they've been able, Riley Green's an all-star already. Tarik Skubal is an all-star already. Like, you got to lock these guys up early, unless you're really going to throw the money at them because of the way the market is shifting and what we're seeing from different players. So when you look at what a Blake Snell gets and what a Max Fried gets, and then you think about what Kyle Tucker is going to get. If you're Riley Green, if you're Tarik Skubal, you just want to get to free agency as soon as you can. And that puts the Tigers at a disadvantage from a negotiating standpoint when you're trying to lock them into a contract extension. So I think if you're the Tigers, you're looking at, hey, we're probably not going to be able to keep Riley Green. We're almost definitely not going to be able to keep Tarik Skubal. And that leaves you with, all right, these young players better be good. Like Max Clark better be the real deal. Thyron Lorenzo better be the real deal. And that's what we've heard Scott Harris preach over and over and over again, is that those guys are the future. They are still coming. He sat there and he talked to us at the winter meetings and he listed a number of young players, Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, Josue Braceno, Hao-Yu Lee, like Thyron Lorenzo, like all these young players who are coming. And it's like, well, they're not here now. And you want to win now, right? Right? Do you? Big question.
Is it an endless rebuild or are they trying to win? This is my point. My point is, if you're not going to sign these players and pay them, you have to trade them. And that's what I'm asking you. Are you the Milwaukee Brewers? Are you the Tampa Bay Rays? Or are you going to try to at least keep a few of your core players that you developed and are part of the reason why you're winning? These are the things that Scott Harris is going to have to navigate. And more importantly, and I've kind of given Chris Ilitch a pass about this stuff, I don't really think right now Chris Ilitch is the problem. I think Scott Harris is the one that doesn't want to spend money. But when it comes to start spending $35 to $45 million on a player long term, yeah, that's Chris Ilitch. That's not Scott Harris. Chris Ilitch needs to be the one to say, do we want to keep this guy? Are we going to sign him to a long-term deal? Is he part of the fixture of the city? And they need to start addressing those questions now, because if you're not going to keep him, you got to start at least having the strategy of what you're going to do if you're not keeping. And I know it's an ugly thing for fans to try to address, but it's something they need to discuss because you're building a baseball team. It's time to get out of here. I want to remind everybody to please rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and especially YouTube. You can always find us embedded in every single Evan Petzold article at thefreep.com. And nobody is more prolific about writing articles every day on the Tigers beat than Evan Petzold. I'd like to thank our editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, our producer, the Magic Man, Robin Chan, who's got his work cut out for him this week. I'd like to send out love to my grandson, Braden Michael Gorash, and hopefully I got a new grandson next Saturday. We'll find out what his name is. Love to the spectacular Savannah Petzold. And until next week, peace.